Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is SockBot, and today I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic. Now, Dreams releases in less than a month now, depending on when I post this video, and that's super exciting, and I am super excited and a little bit terrified because I'm going to be releasing about 1,000 videos in that first opening week, because, well, that's what happens when you're a YouTuber that covers a game like that. But I'm super excited for the launch, but in this whole, like, calm before the storm thing, the storm being those 1,000 whatever videos, I wanted to talk about something a little more personal, a little bit more nostalgic, and that has to do with my origins when it comes to game creation. And this isn't meant to be a huge tips video, so I'm not going to be offering any big world advice for any young game creators out there. It's just to share a little bit of my story, and hopefully you all can share your stories in the comments down below, and we can reminisce about what it was that got us into game creation, and particularly amateur game creation, because obviously I'm not working with any big engines, at least in a major portion of my time. But yes, that's what I want to talk about today. If you do enjoy this sort of thing, great, feel free to leave a like down below, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more. This isn't going to be my entire story, because there's a lot of different things to talk about, but today I at least want to get up to a certain part. But yeah, grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's just, let's have a fun chat, and story time, because story times are fun. So there's no way I can get through my entire story with game creation, or LittleBigPlanet for that matter, in one video. I've already talked about various details in other videos, but nothing really close to telling the whole story. So today, I want to go all the way back as far as I can remember up until the release of LittleBigPlanet, so that will be the timeline for this video. The first memory that I have of game creation is with Stagecraft. If you don't remember Stagecraft, or just didn't find it useful or play it at all, it was a super simple game creation tool with a UI that allowed pretty much anyone to make a game. My brother got it as a kid and let me use it on the family computer, but I ended up spending far more time on it than he did, and I always made either Zelda-type games or platformers starring some sort of fantasy characters, because that's what I was super into. I was super young then, like younger than 10, but somehow I picked up the basics of creating sprites and adding character rules that dictated enemy activity and character controls. I never made full games, but I spent a hell of a lot of time on that, and I'm honestly impressed with the amount I was able to learn that still somewhat applies to the logic that I use today in game creation. I ended up taking a summer course at some point on Stagecraft. I think it was somewhere around 5th grade. It was when the middle school offered it as a sort of day camp. Now, the course isn't really worth mentioning because they didn't teach me anything I didn't already know in Stagecraft, but they did teach me a bit about keyframes in a different program. I can't remember what program it was, but that was a pretty interesting introduction, even if I really wouldn't use keyframes again until Dreams. But things really got started when I discovered RPG Maker. I still remember sitting in my room on my first personal computer, like one that was actually mine, and editing monster stats, creating boss battles that were way too crazy for anyone at all to face, and honestly, I didn't create any game around it, so there's no way they would get to these boss battles, but I spent hours on RPG Maker. Again, I never finished much, and that did start to bother me a bit at this point. I always thought that I would never really have time to finish anything with school and everything else I was doing at the time, and that tended to paralyze me from actually planning or working on a full game. Later, I would discover that I do have very obnoxious ADHD, but that wasn't until about 13 years later, so not part of this story. But I did love these games. I loved them a lot. I had a bout of fun with the editor in Neverwinter Nights, another game that I borrowed from my brother, but I never really got far with that, and that's the only other one I remember from at the time. I didn't play any of the story mode in that game either, so I had no idea how the game actually played, but I do remember playing around in the editor and creating NPCs in particular, largely because I thought it was really cool that when I made this one NPC, I was just messing around at the time, but I figured out that I could give him a two-handed weapon in each hand, and it didn't break the game, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. They were some kind of, like, warglaive or whatever they're called outside of World of Warcraft, like double-sided swords, I guess. But either way, it was super badass, or at least I thought it was badass. Maybe not relevant to the story, but, well, it's my video, so it's here anyways. But after that, I can't remember a whole lot of different game creation tools that I added to my roster up until LittleBigPlanet. There were games here and there, and even after LittleBigPlanet release, but those games were just kind of meh. At this point, I basically had my eye out for any game that could let you make levels yourself, but most of them honestly were kinda crap. If I found something I couldn't do too early on in this sort of creation tool, I tended to push the game aside even before touching the story mode, which I'm not sure was a great idea, but when I already had these other things that could do it, I mean, I didn't really have a need for the new ones. But the only other one that I remember spending any significant amount of time before LittleBigPlanet on was Alien Hominid. If anybody remembers that game, it was originally a Flash game on Newgrounds.com, but I didn't really realize that until after I bought the GameCube version, and I'm talking specifically about the GameCube version. I got it for like 20 bucks at the nearest GameStop alongside a few other games because at the time I would always bring in a handful of games I had, trade them in, and get a crazy amount of credit to buy all these new games. And look, I know that GameStop kind of screws you over on how much credit you get, but it was pretty amazing as a kid to bring in a bunch of games and leave with new ones. It's the same kind of excitement that I experience now when I get my tax return. Like, I realize it's not a great deal, but my lizard brain still loves it, so thus is childhood, I suppose, and, well, I guess adulthood now. But now that I think about it, some of the best experience I had as a kid were trading in these games and getting over $100 spent on random games, so it was a fun time. Anyways, that was a super long aside, but one of these shopping sprees led to Alien Hominid, where I quickly learned that you could create your own levels, well, not in the main game, but in a sort of mini-game called the PDA games. Now, these look stupid as heck, and I'm sorry, but they do, and they're not supposed to look nice, but my friends and I played these for hours. It was right when I first started to actually have friends that I actually hung out with, and I swear we looked like a group of stoners sitting in each other's basements playing these super graphically simple puzzle games that could have passed for a graphing calculator game even back then, but it was still fun. I only made a handful of these, but it was really just a great time, and it brings up the first group of nerdy friends that I could really game with, which is important later on. But that's also when I hit a bit of a drought when it comes to game creation in general. I still played around with RPG Maker and all, but we got distracted by other games. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles was one that we played for hours together, and various other games like that took over my time for a couple years. It feels like forever in my memories, even though it was probably only like a year or two, but I really didn't create much at this time, especially when the Nintendo Wii came out, because that became a huge focus of my gaming alongside Halo and other multiplayer games that I was just playing because my friends played them. I did meet some new friends in middle school, though, and my neighborhood friends, well, we all just kind of drifted apart after that. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, it was just kind of, sort of natural. Like, we didn't hate each other, we still talked to them, but at the time, I had just re-met my best friend, Annie, from first grade when we got into middle school. We had been going to different elementary schools for a few years, but we instantly reconnected on, like, the second or third day when we recognized each other. It just took a bit for one of us to talk to the other. I'm not sure who saw Sue who first, but, like, after a few awkward looks, one of us finally said something, and suddenly we were best friends. We ended up forming a pretty big group of friends together pretty quickly, but the new friend group that formed from us didn't really play video games together. The guys did, and I'd play with them all the time, but I was much closer with the girls. When we all got together, we couldn't exactly boot up Halo or Mario Party, though, because, well, it just wasn't fair when the guys all owned the games and played them so much more. That is, until we started hanging out with Julie. I'm 90% sure it was Annie who introduced us to Julie, and trust me, I'm getting back to game creation, just stay with me. But at the same time, my closest friend also knew Julie, so like since kindergarten, I think it was. It could have been him, but Julie, well, she was kind of a badass. She has 2 older brothers, and as you can imagine, that makes her a Halo prodigy. Well, it did when Halo was relevant in like 2006 and 2007, but regardless, if I were to guess, Julie is the reason we were able to get all of the girls into video games and past any of that awkward like, oh, girls don't play games stigma. So here's an impromptu thank you to her. Thank you, Julie. But the topic of this video is how I got into game creation, right? Well, if you're paying attention, you'll notice that this friend group formed around 2006, 2007. That's when Julie started inviting us over, and when I started inviting all them over to my place on alternate weekends to play video games. And again, 2006, 2007, well, LittleBigPlanet was just around the corner in 2008, and boy, were we ready for it. I was ready for another game to create in, and I had a group of friends to play all of these new creations with. It was literally the perfect timing. But that launch is a tale for another time. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's story time. If you do enjoy this sort of thing and want to see more of my personal story along this, I'll probably end up posting it anyways, but let me know in the comments down below. Again, feel free to like the video and subscribe if you want to see more, but no pressure as always. And yeah, seriously, let me know if you guys play with any of these same programs when you were younger, or if you're playing with them now. I don't know if there's a current version of Stagecraft, but maybe there is. So yeah, let's chat about that, and I hope to get to talk to you guys in the next video. Words are difficult today, apparently. It's been a while since I filmed. Okay, you could tell by the difference in hair, like how long it is between when I film. It has been a while. But we're here today. So hi. I hope you're all doing well. I'll talk to you in the next video. But for now, goodbye! Bye guys!